Galaxy Z Fold 6 versus the Galaxy Z Fold 7. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Let's go. Samsung have upgraded nearly everything about the Z Fold 7 when you compare it to the Z Fold 6, but we've also lost a couple of things along the way. Let's go through it and compare everything that's different about this phone to this phone. Starting with the obvious, it's the design. Samsung with the Z Fold 6 felt like they reached the peak of what they were trying to set out to achieve from the beginning, which was a cover screen that was easy to use one-handed and convenient to use, and then you unfold it into the tablet when you open it up. But then the market has kind of changed. In the 12 months since this has come out, other foldable brands are starting to showcase their hardware prowess and be thin and light and sort of more usable on the cover screen compared to the Fold 6, especially when you compare it to a normal smartphone, which I did when I compared this to the S25 Ultra last week. So Samsung's response was the Fold 7, which is a phone that on the front is basically like a normal phone. Well, it is a normal phone. It's a 21:9, 6.5-inch screen that functions and looks like a normal smartphone. Stark contrast to what we have here on the Fold 6. The thing is, neither of these are wrong. The Fold 6 is easy to use one-handed. That cover screen is very narrow, which makes it really easy to get across. But it's thick. 12.1 millimeters thick means it does occupy more hand space. So what Samsung have done here is they've made it thinner, 8.9 millimeters thin, which we now know is the thinnest foldable on the market, which makes it easier to sort of hold and grip. And then even though it is a bit wider than the Fold 6, you can actually still get across with one hand because it's not occupying as much hand space, if that makes sense. That thickness difference is noticeable in the hand. You definitely feel it, especially when you're gripping on the hinge area. Which one is better? Well, I don't really think either of them is better than the other. The thing that tips the scales for me is the weight. The Z Fold 6 is about 236 grams. And that's okay. Like that for last year was decent for a foldable to be that light. But 215 grams on the Z Fold 7 really sets it apart. It feels stunning to hold this phone, especially when you consider that it unfolds into a tablet. The unfolding part is interesting. Because of the fact this is so thin now, 2 halves of the phone, 4.2 millimeters, which is a lot thinner than what's over here, it actually does make it a bit more challenging to open. When you are trying to open the Fold 7, you've really got to be careful. With the Fold 6, because you've got more surface area to grip onto, it does feel a lot easier to spring it open. Just something to consider. And the inner display is interesting because when you do open it up on the Fold 6, you've got a fully uninterrupted 7.6-inch inner display. Whereas now with the Fold 7, you've got an 8-inch one, but you've got the punch hole camera, which now has been removed from underneath the surface and brought to the top. Samsung have gone away from the under display camera. Some people might agree that the better camera is worth it. I disagree. I think the under display camera is better. Reason why is because when you don't use it, which is literally the majority of time, it's hidden. Completely uninterrupts your view and it's just a better experience aesthetically speaking. And then when you need something from the camera, it does a decent enough job for video calling, which is literally the purpose of it. This is a video sample from the under display camera on the Z Fold 6 and the non-under display camera on the Z Fold 7. It just sort of shows you that for video calling, this is fine on the Fold 6, but obviously it's a better output. One, it goes up to 4K. This is still full HD because it's only 4 megapixel, but it just sort of shows you that it was fine under display. Obviously though, the quality is better, but no one's using this inner selfie camera for anything other than video calls. Yeah, it's better here. It's 10 megapixel. It's also 100-degree field of view, so it's wider, but so just hide it. That's just my view anyway. Especially when you can watch content on it, you can see the difference. The speakers too. That's part of the design, is that the speakers have kind of suffered a little bit. I was just listening back to what I shot, and the Fold 6 has a deeper, richer sound because it's got a thicker chamber to push the sound out of. Not too dissimilar to the way the S25 Ultra pushed out better sound in my comparison earlier in the week. Fold 7, when you switch to that, it just sounds a little bit light on sound. You can hear it for yourself. Samsung are calling the Fold 7 the Ultra that folds. But just how close to that claim are they? Let's find out. Well, let's go. The S25 Ultra is Samsung flexing their slab phone muscle. Are calling the Fold 7 the Ultra that folds. But just how close to that claim are they? Let's find out. Well, let's go. The S25 Ultra is Samsung flexing their slab phone muscle. One thing about this more natural aspect ratio, what it does is on the inside, the two halves of the display now make for one sort of normal smartphone display. So if you're using multitasking on that inner display, it's more natural on the Fold 7 than it is on the Fold 6, especially when you're using flex mode. When you pop that up into that half folded state, that top half of the display is actually now more like a normal smartphone viewing experience as opposed to a bit narrower here. So this is what I mean. You go forward, but you also go backwards, because whilst you've got a bigger display, more natural display, you also go backwards because you lose that under display camera. And then that brings us to the cameras. Hardware wise, we've got some difference. You've got a 12 megapixel macro ultra wide, 200 megapixel main camera, and the same 3x telephoto. Versus here, just a standard ultra wide, standard 50 megapixel, and that same 3x telephoto. The difference isn't really going to come too much from output. I don't think that's the biggest thing you'll notice. What you'll notice is the fact that now you can have more flexible shooting with ultra wide and macro, which means you can get closer to your subjects. And that also brings in focus enhancer, which is also great. You're getting close to something and it automatically switches to the ultra wide to be able to focus on everything. But that 200 megapixel camera is a larger sensor and it's f1.7 aperture. So it's going to have a shallower depth of field to get more natural sort of bokeh. This 50 megapixel here is a 1N 1.56 inch sensor versus a 1N 1.3. So again, that bigger sensor will just serve in more situations. Fundamentally though, the idea of what the camera can do hasn't changed. This will still use flex mode, still capture cinematic stuff when you're in that flex mode state. This just now has more options in its arsenal with macro and with the 200 megapixel. It just gives you a bit more solutions that you can use. Software-wise though, out of the box, this supports log video recording, which I think is a great touch. I've really enjoyed using log on my S25 Ultra, so I'm glad to see it come to a foldable natively now as well. But output-wise, I've started to get a bit tired of pixel peeping and looking for, oh, that blue sky is a bit different here and that one's a bit different over there. Fundamentally, it's a flagship phone from 2025 versus a flagship phone from 2024. You're going to get the usual improvements to processing and the hardware upgrades that I've spoke about, but fundamentally, you're still getting a good camera here. It's an expensive phone. Samsung are going to tune it right. You just will now get a slightly better one over here. The advantage being that the form factor is now thinner and lighter for you to carry around for that point to shoot. As far as microphone quality goes, this is the Fold 6 that I'm speaking on right now. You can kind of gauge the video quality as well from this. 4K 30, but this is the microphone from the Fold 6. And this is the microphone quality from the Galaxy Z Fold7 and the video quality. It's probably not the most in-depth video test. Again, I don't think it's necessarily about the output. I think it's more about what they're capable of doing when you are actually using each phone, as opposed to just the pure output that they provide. Small camera hardware problem that I have noticed, and this has nothing to do with the camera specifically, is that because of the power button being so thin, I've actually had trouble double pressing to launch the camera, and you really have no issues over here whatsoever. So just another small thing to consider, that thinness might not be the better solution, even if it feels incredible. Then we have performance. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy. Again, it's going to give you a performance improvement. You're going to get faster, smoother performance. You're going to get better sort of improvement when it comes to exporting stuff and editing things. All of that stuff exists. Samsung DeX is going to be faster, but the battery capacity is the same. 4,400, 4,400. Whether that's a problem or not, that's yet to be determined. For me, I haven't had an issue with it so far. I think it's been fine. I think Samsung have shown with the S25 Edge that they can properly optimize a battery performance despite capacity being limited. The density of the battery is good, but then the performance with the chipset, also good. But then there's another thing, and this is the other step back that I talk about. No S Pen support on the Z Fold 7. So I wanted to sort of compare the experience of using the S Pen here and using no S Pen over here, because the S Pen on the Fold unlocks that inner display. You go from having a standard tablet experience to an elevated one. So I ran 3 tests. I used the S Pen and no S Pen for taking notes. I used the S Pen and no S Pen for signing a document. And then I used no S Pen and S Pen for editing a photo. I wanted to see where the sort of advantage lies. Obviously, in all 3 situations, the S Pen smashed it. Getting that fine control over the note taking, I use it to set out the formation and put the positions for my players for the team that I coach. Way easier with the S Pen. Signing a document, less problematic, but it's so much funner to sign your name with a pen. Just is. Photo editing too, the S Pen just gives you an extra touch that you can add to it, whether that be like more fine controls or being able to draw and annotate onto the picture itself. I just find that the S Pen unlocks that a little bit better. It's not quite the same when you have to use your finger. So that other step backwards, losing that S Pen support, yeah, it's a problem. But I think the bigger problem is the fact that they couldn't embed it in the phone. Because it's not anywhere here, and because myself personally, I'm not the biggest phone case guy, so I haven't really put a case on any of my phones, remembering to bring the S Pen with me everywhere I went was difficult. It wasn't so much as it was a chore, it was just the fact that if I misplaced it, I didn't know where I put it, I just have to go without it. And then when I used the Fold Special Edition for 4 to 5 months, I didn't have one at all for that. So that wasn't that big of a deal in the end. I think until Samsung can find a solution to make an ultra thin S Pen that can go in here, just leave it out. It's not worth it. It's not worth making the phone thicker or compromising the display structure to do so. So fundamentally, what does it come down to? For me, it's not so much the performance or the camera, because I think you're still getting a good camera experience here. It's down to the design. Are you happy with a narrower cover screen that's easy to use one-handed, but slightly heavier and slightly thicker? Remembering that you can get easier grip, potentially, if that's what you prefer, or do you want a normal smartphone on the front? One that you will forget you feel like using a folding phone because of how lightweight and how thin it is, and then you still get the benefit of unfolding into that big giant tablet experience that still gives you that sense of wonder and magic every time you use it, then upgrade to the Fold 7. But if the compromises are too much, losing S Pen support and no under-display camera is something you just can't look past, then maybe shop around for a Fold 6 could be the way to go. I've tried to keep this comparison a little bit more simple. I think a lot of people might pixel peep with the camera. They'll go in with detail. They'll do 200 megapixel versus 50. Fundamentally, that doesn't matter. Barely anyone will shoot at 200 megapixel. It's all about that main camera and the flexibility that having the better bokeh and the macro now has. But it really comes down to design preference. This versus that. Simple. If you like this comparison and other ones like it, go check out my channel. I've compared the Fold 7 to the Fold Special Edition in a very similar way. Go check that out. And I've got a full video coming where I compare every Fold, all the way from Fold 1 through to Fold 7. And I've got the OG Fold versus Fold 7. That's a fun one. Anyways, hit subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yoo!